In this video, I'm going to cover tangent. So tangent is the third function we're going to do in this series in trigonometry. And tangent is defined as the opposite side to the adjacent side, which is the equivalent of taking sine and dividing it by cosine. Now, tangent is basically taking the side we have here, the opposite side to the adjacent side, in a triangle with a 90-degree angle. Now, what's interesting about tangent is that it is not, it is defined for every point on the y-axis, unlike sine and cosine, which is only defined from -1 to 1. However, tangent also has one key difference, and that difference is that the period for tangent is only 180 degrees. So this is important to keep in mind, because sine and cosine, it's 360 degrees. Given that we know that tangent is the ratio of sine to cosine, or sine divided by cosine, we can simply take the values we have here that I covered in the previous videos and just divide them. So tangent is basically going to be like this: sine divided by cosine. So we're doing in 0 degrees, tangent is going to be equal to what? 0 divided by 1 is going to be 0. For 30 degrees, this we can write it down separately. So it is basically doing 1/2, because it's like, sine divided by cosine, or 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 divided by 2. And this, what this gives us is 1/2 times 2 divided by the square root of 3. We get rid of the 2's and get 1 over the square root of 3. Now, for us to make it look a little better, we can write it down like this. We can just multiply it by the square root of 3 and get this, the square root of 3 divided by 3. So for 30 degrees is going to be equal to the square root of 3 divided by 3. For 45 degrees, we are dividing the same numbers, so it's going to just give us 1. For 60 degrees, tangent, it's the square root of 3 divided by 2 divided by 1/2, so we can write it down once again, divided by 1/2, which is just taking the square root of 3 divided by 2 times 2, which gives us the square root of 3. So for 60 degrees, it's going to be equal to the square root of 3. And now, what's important is the last point, and that, or degree, and that degree is 90 degrees. Because for tangent, as you can see, we cannot, in math, overall divide by 0. So for 90 degrees, it's not going to be defined. So we're just going to write down n. So these are the most important values for tangent. Now I'm going to do the graph of tangent. So tangent is defined on a period of 180 degrees. So what we're going to do is that this is 0 degrees, and we go 90 degrees to the right and 90 degrees to the left. And given that we already know the values for each degrees, or the important values for these degrees, we can simply just do them on the graph. So I'm going to start with, for example, 45 degrees. So for 45 degrees, it's going to give us 1. So given that we are here, it goes here, right? Now, given that here it's negative, it's going to go down. So now this is 45 degrees, this is 45 degrees. The graph is defined on this period, and we can do different angles. For example, now 0 is going to give us 0, so we have another point here. And we also know that it's not defined for 90 degrees, but the graph will still go very close to that point. So the graph is going to look like this. So the graph goes very, very close very close to the 90-degree angle but never touches it because it's not defined, because we cannot divide 1 by 0. So this is the reason why the graph continues but never quite touches 90 degrees. And of course the graph, and that's similar to cosine and sine, it goes to infinity, so it continues, right? So we do another 180 degrees and it continues like this, and on the left side as well. But given that it repeats itself, it's sufficient to just do one.